We are live. Hi, I'm Joanna Robinson. That's Chris Ryan.
Hi.
Chris hosts a show called The Watch. You might have heard of it. I co-host occasionally a show called Prestige TV Podcast, and together we are part of the new Ringer TV YouTube channel, which you are currently watching. Welcome. Glad to have you. And we thought we would do a little like cross-pollination check-in. We might do these. We're not sure how regularly. We're going to do these occasionally.
Yeah,
Chris suggested a sort of quarterly check-in, perhaps. We'll see the frequency. What do you
we
think, Chris?
we brainstormed a couple of different ideas for this. One was
Yeah.
like a cup of coffee with Joe and Chris, which
Yeah.
kind of has like a little bit of Vince and Neil from Heat vibes to it.
Love that for
Uh,
us.
I think I also suggested just one Zin with Joe and Chris, but I
You
don't know
really
if
you were really high on that idea as a concept. And I
I
think
don't
it's
know if
because
Joanna was totally into it.
I-
But yeah, we're here. You know, we both do our pods. We both chat about TV. Joe's been on The Watch. I've been on Prestige TV. We just have launched this channel, so we wanted to do just a mailbag from folks. You can reach us at what's the email address they
it's
can hit us up at?
ringertv@spotify.com.
There you go. So if you have any questions over the course of your life, feel free to hit us up. And
Yeah. We'll be
Joe,
collecting those in the interim until we do the next one. We've got a couple questions from you all at that email address, and we also have a live chat going, I believe, that's being monitored. So we might be able to sort of rapid fire a few of your questions, if indeed anyone is watching this at 12:30 on a Wednesday. We have no way of knowing. I
yeah.
suggested a beer with Chris and Joanna, and Chris is unsure if we could smuggle alcohol into the studio there
Well, I
at
mean,
Spotify.
if this was a Landman mailbag, I think it would only be appropriate for us to be drinking because it's always 5 o'clock on Landman. But since this is probably a very Landman light mailbag,
But
I
not
thought maybe
Landman Zero, not Landman Zero, and that's a promise from me
it's
to
sort of
you.
Landman Ultra. I
Yeah,
think, yeah.
there you go. All right. So while we're still trying to get Chris that Zin sponsorship, we will be starting with our first email from Alex. Who says a longtime fan. Thanks so much, Alex. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the current state of Prestige TV and HBO Max specifically, with a somewhat tepid season 2 of House of the Dragon, Doom Prophecy not standing out in any meaningful way, and the looming Harry Potter nostalgia baiting. Is this kind of lull from HBO a bump of the road or a long-term concerning issue? Do you think HBO will be able to reclaim the Sunday night crown, or is the current TV landscape slipping through their fingers? Chris Ryan, what do you think?
Okay. Yeah, Alex, I think it's a good question. And I think it's like two or three questions in one.
Sure.
Right. So I personally think that HBO, as we have come to know it over the last 10, 15, 20 years as this sort of premier destination for prestige television, has been going through some changes, obviously being part of the Warner Brothers Discovery merger, taking
Right.
on a lot of the genre storytelling that was originally like Max and now seems to be upstreamed onto what we know as HBO and going up on Sunday nights like The Penguin, House of the Dragon obviously is an HBO thing, but Dune probably would have been a Max thing.
Right.
And I think that these strikes and COVID probably threw a wrench into some of their HBO
Correct.
original development
Mhm.
uh assembly line, and next year will be a very strong HBO as HBO year if I had to guess, between White Lotus, between a Tim Robinson show that is apparently coming, between this cop show with Mark Ruffalo coming from the creator of Mayor of Easttown. I
Yeah,
think there's
yeah.
just a ton of stuff to look forward to on HBO. But Joe, what did you think of this question?
I thought it was a really good question. It's something we've been asking ourselves on House of R, on Prestige TV, especially looking back at the year. The shows that Rob and I decided to cover on Prestige TV, it was a lot of Apple shows and a lot of FX shows and very little HBO because a lot of the HBO stuff was more House of R territory than it was like what we do on Prestige TV. But I am excited about several of the projects that you mentioned. There's also The Pit. I don't know
Oh
if
yeah,
how
that's
much this is on
Max.
like
Yeah.
people's radars. This is Max. And I don't, Bill and I have gone back and forth on this about how much people at home pay attention at this point to the difference between Max and HBO. I think it's really blurry for most people watching at home. This idea of owning Sunday night is, of course, a very HBO thing that's like destination we're all watching together television. But as that's increasingly rare, I think people are confused about what's a Max show and what's an HBO show. But The Pit, which is this medical drama from John Wells, from ER pedigree, starring Noah Wiley, is this sort of like, you remember ER, you like ER, we're doing that on Max. And
Yeah.
so it's like a little bit IP in that it's leaning on some nostalgia for us, but it is the kind of thing that we want to encourage HBO and Max to do, which is like there are no penguins or Bene Gesserit or dragons in this. And as much as I love all of
That we
those
know
things
of. Yeah.
that we know of, what a twist. This is actually a spinoff of The Last of Us. Who's to say?
This is
But
where
yeah,
the breakout happens. This is where the zombie
exactly. Patient
infection
zero,
starts.
Mushroom Central. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with you. I think we have to take into consideration the strikes and COVID. And I mean, we've dealt with that on the TV side across platforms this
Yeah.
year. And on the film side, like Fantasy was talking about the film lineup this year feeling like, I think the phrase he used was thin gruel. And so, it's just like this is just a rebound year for a lot of things in
Yeah.
general.
The survive till 25 thing, I think, applies somewhat to television. There's one element of this question that I did want to ask you about,
Yeah.
which was, do you think HBO will be able to reclaim the quote Sunday night crown, or is the current TV landscape slipping through its fingers? Um, the idea of there being a destination day of the week that
Yeah.
everybody is like, man, it's dinner's done, the dishes are done,
Hmm.
the kids are in bed, whatever, the dog has been walked. It's time for X. And truly, our glory years were nights where we had 2 full hours, if not more, of Sunday night shows to watch. Veep, Girls, Thrones.
Yeah. It's like a drama and two comedies on HBO
It was
every
the
Sunday.
best.
Yeah.
Um, I can't really, for me, the closest thing that we have to this right now is the way that the Taylor Sheridan shows show up on Sunday nights,
Really? Okay.
where it's like a destination. But even in that case, the streaming shows do go up like at 9 p.m. the night before if you're on the
Right.
West Coast. So there isn't that like everyone's starting this at once. Do you think HBO or anyone will ever get back this idea of like we own this night?
It's funny, we've got like vapors of it from our various foxholes because I will say that like some of the Disney Plus shows, like your Star Wars shows or your Marvel shows, which drop at like 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, that's something that they've been very committed to is like, we're not dropping these at midnight. We're going to drop this in like quote unquote prime time
Mm-hmm.
and people gather around to watch. I know a lot of people watch those shows as live as you can get on streaming. And so Taylor Sheridan verse or the very IP shows that Alex was asking about seem to be the destination for that. I I have to say I think White Lotus will definitely be that
Yeah, you're
for
right.
HBO next year. And I think it's possible that some of these other shows, like something like Mayor of Easttown, is something that took a couple weeks to catch on, but once
Mm-hmm.
it did, that was owning Sunday nights going forward. So I do think that HBO, if 25 turns out to be a really strong year for them, can hold on to that. But it's increasingly rare. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I miss it. Bring back the monoculture. It was good, actually. That's what I have to say about that.
Can we jump to this question from Ian?
Please. Ian says A24 has just announced a TV series about Bill Shankly and his legendary tenure at Liverpool FC. What are your thoughts on football entering the Prestige TV universe? And who would be your dream casting for Billy Shanks? This is, of course, for Chris.
Ian, thank you. So I support Liverpool. Liverpool currently playing in the Carabao Cup semifinal, I believe. Not sure what the score is. Uh, I'm excited about this for a number of reasons. One, A24, the pedigree. Two, Jack Thorne is writing this series. Three, it's about Bill Shankly, one of the legendary managers of Liverpool when they were winning all these first division titles and conquering Europe. The reason why I wanted to answer this question is because I have two answers for the casting of Bill Shankly, a heart and a head one. Heart is Clive Owen, who is also a huge Liverpool fan, narrated a Liverpool documentary, was my icebreaker when I talked to Clive Owen from Monsieur Spade, was to like just start asking Mohamed Salah questions.
Uh-huh.
My head says Peter Capaldi. Shankly is Scottish. I think Capaldi is a little closer in age and look to Bill Shankly.
I
And
need to
Peter
Google image this.
Capaldi as complicated, tortured, but extremely charismatic football manager in the past would be unbelievable content to me.
He doesn't have like the Capaldi mop of curls, the
No,
iconic
you'd have to give
Capaldi
him a little
mop.
bit of a hair job. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I see the vision, and if they can like bring in some of the like Iannucci writers to craft him some like delicious swears, then that sounds like a
Jack
show
Thor
that
is
even I
kind
would
of
watch.
the British Taylor Sheridan in terms of how prolific he is. It's crazy.
Yes, that is true. I mean, but a lot of adaptations that I have some questions about. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay,
All right, that was for you. This next one's for me.
I gotta ask. This is from Logan.
Yeah.
Joanna, I was wondering what is your personal favorite series of Taskmaster, and also what's your personal top 5 of all contestants?
So Taskmaster is a show that like we talked about on our sort of stocking stuffer episode. Rob and I talked a little bit about on our moments of the year episode. Is this on your radar at all, Chris? Do you watch
Oh yeah,
Taskmaster?
I watched
Okay.
most of the Mae Martin season.
I was gonna say, I know that you and Phoebe are huge fans of Mae Martin. She told me you guys like went to go see them a bunch of times
Yeah.
live. I am. It's sort of like I don't know if you were this way with TV shows like this, but I kind of feel like Dance with the One That Brought You. It's sort of like the season that you started with is maybe always gonna have a special place in your heart. I found Taskmaster because I was in a like pre-Bake Off Noel Fielding rabbit hole of like anything Noel Fielding was doing, I wanted to find. So he did a season with Hugh Dennis, Joe Lycett, Lolly Adefope, and Mil Giedroyc, and that's like an incredible season. So that's like season 4, I think. But there's a season with Aisling B, Bob Mortimer, Mark Watson, Nish Kumar, and Sally Phillips that is also absolutely iconic.
Okay.
But I would say my dream lineup is Mae Martin. Genuinely did put that on not to pander to you. Mae Martin was incredible on the show. Mike Wozniak, Rose Matafeo, Joe Wilkinson, and James Acaster, who's my favorite comedian, bar none. And there's an incredible James Acaster HBO stand-up special that I don't know if it's out yet, but I've seen and is really, really good.
Yeah, I
So
think it's coming out. If it's not out yet, I think it's this week.
yeah, it's so good. I really recommend it. So that's my Taskmaster answer. Okay, you wanted to answer this one from Dan, who says,
Yeah.
"Why do the Tina Fey and Robert Carlock shows seem to not grab the admiration of the wider public?" So we're talking about like 30 Rock, um, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and Dan wrote in before the Girls Five Eva cancellation at Netflix news, but that is a very topical question. So do you have an answer for this, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I would say that 30 Rock
I agree.
has a pretty significant hold over social media. It's used as like reaction gifs. I think that I still hear people make 30 Rock references, maybe as much, if not more, than Office references in some ways.
But I think it's locked to a generation. I think it's locked to the people who watched it, and then it didn't have that everyone's rewatching The Office or Friends or some of these other shows
Yes.
on Netflix. It didn't have that life afterwards, it seems like.
I will watch like if I'm on a flight, I will easily watch like 6 episodes of 30 Rock back to back.
So good.
It is one of my favorite shows. And I think the thing that Dan was kind of getting at the longer version of his question and about the Tina Fey Robert Carlock shows in general is maybe these shows lack the sentimentality that The Office maybe didn't always have actually on screen, but certainly it got broadcast onto the show as people became like Jim and Pam shippers and like
Hmm.
romantic about kind of some of the characters on the show, even if the show itself was obviously a very like clear comedy and was a clear satire. And the Tina Fey Robert Carlock shows don't really do that. They don't really give you a sentimental, soft, squishy part. It's
Yeah.
all barbs. It's all characters doing 3 layered jokes, 7 jokes per page. And it's a really great thing to watch. But like Girls Five Eva is a really good case where I think they tried to do some sweetness in there, especially with the Sarah Bareilles character, but is really more of like an accomplished, like an Olympian feat of joke making throughout the 3 seasons.
And that's how I feel about Kimmy Schmidt as well. Like that is a really actually really pleasurable rewatch for me, but it's a really easy background rewatch because the emotional arcs of the characters aren't really that important at all on that
Yeah, it's
show.
like
It's just
farce. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. The the Office thing is interesting because I do think as The Office moved further and further away from its like British original, it did get quite sentimental, and you
Yeah.
see that as the creators who worked on that go on to make, Parks and Recreation and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like all of which has this sentimentality woven into it. And so you have like Michael Scott weeping often in later seasons of The Office,
Yeah.
like that it became that, I think, very much so. That's a really good point, that maybe you need that sentimentality to be sticky,
Yeah. It's like
you know.
maybe like a top. I know that everybody has their favorite office moments, but is the most iconic one Jim and Pam's kiss at the sort of rest stop? And so if that's
Well,
the
yeah.
case, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like the basketball game, there's 100 things in the office that people remember, but
Yeah.
I almost feel like if you were doing a montage of the office, like that would be the hammer.
But it would be like Michael saying leaving, like Michael saying
Yeah.
goodbye to
Yeah.
everyone. Michael shows up to Pam's art show. Like there are moments that people like feel really, yeah, quite emotional about beyond the shipping, that I think makes that show stick for people. Okay, you picked this question, and I have questions about you picking this question because it feels so Galactic Brain big to
Yeah.
me. Billy asks, presented with the reality that we all have a finite amount of time available to us, but an infinite amount of TV available to us, how do you decide which shows are awarded some of that time, and how much time are these new shows allotted before deciding whether or not to continue? Historical significance, current cultural popularity, completism, personal taste, etc.
Okay. So I only wanted to answer this just because it's end of the year time where people are making 10 best lists. And
Yes.
I think it's pretty rare. I will say that I can't claim in any way to have seen all or possibly even 75% of TV or 70% of TV this year. Even taking out all the stuff that I probably wouldn't consider anyway, like I don't know, like a CBS procedural that I probably would never would have put in my 10
The,
best list anyway.
the Chicago verse,
Sure,
perhaps.
which I actually like will throw on for like an hour while I'm like doing stuff around my house.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to note that this is almost becoming an ungovernable like time in television where you cannot really claim, I mean, you can, but I think it's actually like a very physically taxing thing to watch all of all TV. Um, and so what happens is I wind up really like, shout out Carly Rae Jepsen. I just cut to the feeling, man. I
Wow, the
just go,
prophet Carly Rae
I
here with
throw a
the,
show on, and if it
yeah.
grabs me, it grabs me. And if it doesn't, if I'm interested in the subject matter, I'll give it an episode or two, three. But
Hmm.
if it doesn't, it's just maybe not, it's not speaking to me. And I think that there are critics who are like, if I start something, I finish it. If something is coming out and it feels like it's going to be of importance, I will watch all of it. I do not do that. I don't know how you feel about that.
I can't do that. I think it's physically impossible. And even like some of the top TV critics that we are like pals with, I'll talk to them. They have to pick and choose as well. And so I think, there's a lot that we cover just by dint of our jobs. Like, what do you have to watch, and all the sports stuff that you cover? What do you have to watch for all the big pick episodes you're going to be on? What am I watching for all the House of R? How much lore am I intaking? Like all of that sort of stuff. And so we cannot possibly watch everything.
Yeah.
And I do, I am curious if something is huge. I am more curious to be part of that conversation. Like that's definitely feeds things. And but then I make exceptions, like Taylor Sheridan is just not for me, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I know it will be amply covered on The Ringer, so that's okay. And then there's some shows that I watch that I know nobody is talking about. If it's like I have a sneaky link to a British show that's not here yet or something like that. And that's just like, that's a great comfort for me because I don't have to be forming opinions in real time while I'm watching it. I just get to enjoy it. So
Yeah.
that's
I think
part of
that
it.
there's also I think when Sean does the big picture and does 300 movies in a year, it's for a mission to sincerely engage with the state of cinema.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I think watching 500 hours of television in a year would make me sincerely engage with the state of television that much better. I think it would probably diminish my appreciation of the television I liked already.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, I think TV should play like a normal role in your life. And if there are good stories out there and good shows, I'd like to recommend them. It's in no way am I like, oh, I have all of the knowledge and I am self-selecting what you should and shouldn't watch. It's just like, hey man, I will probably watch way more shows than the average person, and I'm trying to make recommendations.
Something I love that you and Andy do is that you like chase your passions. Like
We sure
if
do.
you
We've really been overserved at this point, especially this espionage moment.
I was gonna say if you want to talk about Monsieur Spade, you're gonna talk about Monsieur Spade, and it doesn't matter like how many people are watching that
And people
show,
are
you
just like,
know?
I don't know how to watch this.
Yeah.
Like, I do not have this channel.
How do
And
I
we're
even
like,
access
episode
it?
3. Let's really get
Yeah.
into it.
Let's dive deep.
Yeah.
All right. So I feel like that's like a pure way, like that you and Andy are just like, do we actually care about it? We're gonna talk about it. Whereas Rob and I are like, we will finish disclaimer if it kills us. That is what we
Yes.
will do.
Yeah.
Okay, we have this question from Helen, and it's really just a part of a brick in a larger wall that I want to build with you, Chris. Which Helen asked Joe, she said, nay, demanded, Joe, please talk about Agatha all along with Chris. So here's my question. You and Andy are out on a lot of the IP shows, and I support you in that. Are there, of the IP shows that you skipped this year, the
Yes.
Marvels, the Star Wars, the whatever, is there any that you're sort of teetering on that I can like push you over the edge on? Anything you're like, maybe over the holiday I might catch up on this or that?
I think I stopped watching Agatha out of no hostility towards Agatha around episode 3 or 4.
Hmm.
I really found it very charming, but was kind of a little bit bored by like the road and a lot of the kind of like storytelling MacGuffin mechanisms that were like distractions from her obvious like emotional journey. Um,
Hmm.
and sometimes when shows like say Silo or maybe even Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power,
Yeah.
where I'm like, man, like I just feel like there's just too much going on. That's now I say that, and then if anyone watched Lioness, they would be like, what? How could you say like that has too much going on?
Yeah.
But I think I was not immune to the charms of Agatha. I will try to finish it.
And last night I texted you and Andy to let you know that Matthew Kasovitz is on Skeleton
It's on Skeleton
Crew.
Crew. Yeah.
How are you feeling?
I'm
Tempted?
going to check it out. And I was gonna say that's a really good example of why it would be cool if honestly, like some of these IP shows became a little bit more story of the week.
Mm.
Because I would love to just check out an episode of Skeleton Crew with Matthew Kasovitz on it.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch 5 episodes of Skeleton Crew to get to it.
I feel like you could watch that episode standalone.
I'm
It's a
sure I
fairly
could. Yeah,
standalone
there's actually
adventure.
the cops are not going to kick down my door because I have not a Skeleton Crew completist.
Exactly. All right, we have a bunch of questions from the comments, so I'm going to rapid fire the last of these that we've sort of handpicked in advance.
Sure.
Natalie asks if are there any is there any period TV we would recommend this year, other than like Say Nothing? She knows Chris is a real Gilded Age head. Anything you want to recommend, Chris, in the period drama or otherwise
Yeah, I
category?
just wanted to shout out My Lady Jane, which also has elements of fantasy to it, but is a great historical dramedy. I would say comedy drama
Yeah.
that people can check out on Amazon Prime.
A really great show. I would like to co-sign that. And I would also say The Buccaneers on Apple is sort of like a classic, really good period,
And I
literary
also
adaptation.
just because Anthony Boyle has been coming up so much recently, I would
Yeah.
say nothing. He was quite good as John Wilkes Booth on Manhunt that was on Apple earlier in the year.
Great mustache work all around, I would
I
say,
know.
for Anthony Boyle. Okay. John just wanted to ask if I've watched The Detectorists. I have. I love that show. That is
Okay.
a huge comfort show. Have you seen the show?
I haven't.
It's Toby Jones and Mackenzie Crook, and their
Oh
hobby is they
yeah,
walk
this is like
around
the
with like
biggest show in
I
England right
love
now, right?
I well no, it's like an older show, but it
Oh,
was
okay.
huge. I love that show. It's very peaceful, very like cozy. A great holiday watch, I would say.
Okay.
Um and then Michael and Chris both asked if we could bring back one TV show for like a final season, something maybe that was canceled too soon or we felt had a little more juice in it. What would we bring back? Chris, what would you bring back?
You should go first because I have a Zach.
Okay, I'm gonna zig and say The Hour, which was a wonderful show with Dominic West and Ben Whishaw and Romola Garai, and it was about TV news in the 50s in the UK, and it got canceled on a cliffhanger in season 2. That's a
Oh,
real heartbreaker for me. So just bring back like six episodes and wrap it up and call it a day. That's all I ask for. What do you say, Chris?
okay. Michael and Chris both said two crucial words: bring back.
Mm.
I don't think we should do this anymore.
For the most part, I agree with you. I do.
I am struggling to think of an example of a show coming back, even my beloved Deadwood, in any
Yeah.
form, even my beloved Jesse Pinkman coming back to the screen in El
El
Camino.
Camino.
Even
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, one of the more successful ones has been the most recent iteration of Veronica Mars, not the sort of crowdfunded movie,
No,
but
I know. Yeah.
the series that they did, which is kind of like a little bit more dark and grown up. But I kind of am coming around to the idea that once these actors have moved on and once the sets have been struck, it's really, really hard to capture the magic again.
Yeah.
More often than not, it doesn't diminish my feeling for the previous version, but I think that it's okay for things to have their run. And I think it's okay for things to have cult status if they didn't get to finish what they were trying to say.
I
And
think
it sucks. And I wish, like, from something as sort of silly as the Netflix show The Society had a next, I wish that had another season, but it didn't. And it's kind of cool that it just is like this little snapshot. I think that the longing to have like another season of this or another season of that, it's like, man, let Jack Bauer retire. Let Matt
I
Saracen stay off the football
oh
field.
my God, please. Oh my God, please. No, I largely agree with you. Which I guess an exception, I will give an exception to like the occasional. I don't know why we've become so UK TV pilled, but this is who we are, Chris. I will say the occasional like Christmas special in the
Oh yeah,
UK. So like a Gavin and Stacey Christmas special. So I will go back and amend my statement and say, give me 1 hour of the hour. Just let me know where everyone is and that they're safe.
yeah.
And then and then it's curtains.
And
But
there
you're
are
right.
some shows that kind of build into their chemistry. Like Sherlock could come back.
Yes.
Um, and I think it would be very popular, and I couldn't wait to watch it. But that is like 3 episodes when we can do it. You know,
Right.
I think that's fine. I think it's more when it's like I don't think they should bring Parks and Rec back. You know?
No, and I think for the most part, the point is not that these things are necessarily bad or that they diminish anything that came before, but that they almost feel like they don't exist. Like
Yeah,
they happen, there's all this hype about it,
yeah.
and
The
then it's
Party
like,
Down reunion is a
yeah,
very good example of
yeah, exactly. All right, last but not least in our pre-selected questions, this one comes from
that.
our beloved friend Mallory Rubin, who has written in character something she threatened to do, and Chris says I get to read this email that is
I
absolute
just wanted to watch
gibberish.
your face while you read this.
Mal wrote, as Tommy Norris, to my fellow landmen, if I accidentally hammer off my own pinky tip while springing to action at the rig, should I seek medical attention beyond a cig and a Dr. Pepper? While I have you, do you know if there's any more boar bolognese in the fridge? It's been a long day at the ER. Not for me this time. It's Cooper again. And I don't have the energy to swing by the Patch Cafe for another lecture on how my Michelob Ultra consumption isn't compatible with sober life. Also, can you ask Angela to stop FaceTiming me? Jesus, I text. While we're on the subject of Angela, do you know if she picked up that toothbrush like we discussed?
My question
Um,
is for you, Joe, is does this
yeah.
make you want to watch Landman at all? Because these are
No.
all examples of things that happen in Landman.
Nothing that Mallory has ever said about Landman makes me want to watch it. But my question for you, Chris, is do you feel like Landman would be an even better show if Mallory Rubin wrote for it?
Um, I would that would kind of take away Mallory's enjoyment of it. That's what I don't want to see. But Mal on season 2 Landman Writers Room as the first time Taylor Sheridan has brought in an outside
Uh-huh.
writer,
It's
and
just
it's
Taylor
Mallory.
and Mallory Rubin, who I will watch then. That's my promise.
Okay,
From me to Taylor Sheridan's ears. I promise. All right. So we got a few questions that I want to zip through. Ted Logan would like to let both of us know that Liverpool is up 0-2. I don't know when that message came in, but love to hear it. A couple White Lotus
yeah,
questions. I may not read all of your username, guys, if that's okay, but would love to hear your thoughts on upcoming White Lotus season, how you think it cast compares, and where in the world would you take White Lotus in a future season? Chris, any
okay.
thoughts on
White Lotus cast always stacked, but part of the pleasure of White Lotus is the unexpected performance,
that?
or the out of nowhere performance. I
Mm-hmm.
certainly wasn't checking for Will Sharp before last season.
Yeah.
And between this and A Real Pain, he's just become
He
like a big
was
favorite of mine.
so good in Real Pain.
What about you? Cast stacking up?
I mean, yeah. So we've got Carrie Coon and Walton Goggins, two all-time icons. Parker Posey perfectly here for, but like I'm looking for someone like Patrick Schwarzenegger, who's never impressed me,
Yeah.
to like come through and impress me in season,
Yeah. Yeah.
something
That's
like
the
that.
sort of the great part about this. As far as locations, um, I have a different question, which is, do you think that this is going to be, how many more seasons of White Lotus do you think we're going to get?
Oh, as many as Mike White can dupe Max into paying for vacations for him.
Okay.
Don't you think?
I'm wondering whether or not he switches up the exotic seaside, like, water based pleasure, and we get like a kind of night country situation going.
You think he wants to go to the Arctic?
Yeah, scientific expedition.
I think he should switch it up and do like a cruise. It should be a cruise somewhere, like
Oh
Alaska.
God,
How about an Alaska cruise?
that's good. Yeah, going
Okay.
to see the ice caps before
Yeah.
they melt. Okay,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Great.
I'll take some of these.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I get a question about how much research goes into the Wayne Jenkins impression. More, it's more than you would probably think, and I'm not
Okay.
super proud of that.
Wait. 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 I just like. Are we practicing in the mirror?
It's
Are
about
we?
having things that are literally, so there's like the speech Wayne gives, or not even speech, but when Wayne is yelling in the
Mhm.
sort of garage slash warehouse where he arrests the guy, where I take that thing from, he says like three different things. And so I have to find three things from the movie. And I also pressure myself to imagine Wayne as a character, maybe in the film or maybe who could be added to the film. So it's difficult. Like when you're
Okay.
like, he could be Gerard Butler's divorce attorney in Den of Thieves, it gets like a little.
Do you feel like that would make the experience better for listeners if you explained where you envision Wayne Jenkins inside of the film?
uh I don't know.
I
I
think it
don't
would, and I would
know. I think
urge
it's
you to
really just
add
about me
that to the
yelling in a
rep.
Baltimore accent.
Okay.
Okay, so Rich wants to know, what are the odds prestige shows that are initially planned as limited series like Shogun and the Penguin will invent enough good material for successful second seasons that don't feel watered down? And we have another question here about, what do you think of the latest trend of limited series getting transitioned to regular series?
Yeah. I hate this. I think this is my version of your don't bring back Deadwood for a movie or sort of thing, where I'm just like, Big Little Lies was a great single season of television, and we should not have had more.
I agree.
And with Shogun, something that you and I would agree is perhaps the best show of the year, um, based on a book that they finished adapting. I am so nervous for season 2 of Shogun. Like really nervous despite loving the talent that's involved and trusting FX to a large degree. But something that's currently airing right now is Bad Sister season 2 on Apple. There's no reason there should have been a second season of that show, and I'm not watching it, but what I've heard from people is there is no reason that that should exist. Similarly,
Yeah.
Squid Game is about to premiere, and that was really intended to be a one season thing. So the question is, can you prove that you deserve to exist if you're a second season of a limited series? And more often than not, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's this talk slash announcement of Presumed Innocent coming back, but it turning into something like an anthology series about the
Yes.
criminal justice system or murder trials. That's an example of a show where I'm really glad they're not putting Rust back in Double Jeopardy there.
Yeah.
I don't think that would be an entertaining series. I understand why people would be like, man, we'd really love to see more of this. But the limited series phenomenon is because people feel like they have to be present for the finale. Like they want to see the story be completed in this 6 episode, 8 episode run. And I think when we start trying to invent stuff to continue these shows, it's a little bit more difficult. Shogun, I mean, I was just so impressed by what they did
It was
that
amazing.
if they think they can do a second season, who am I to doubt them? Uh, but yeah, I think it's an issue. I definitely think that this is my. I think I'm a little less worried about this than I am about the fact that nobody wants to make sequels anymore. They just want to make prequels. That I think is like a way bigger issue.
Well, I think to your point about wanting to know how a thing ends, this is how Game of Thrones was sold to HBO in the first place, is like the Weiss and Benioff in their pitch doc were saying we don't have to question our plans for seasons 3, 4, 5, or 6. It's already been written. That's incredibly ironic given how everything panned out with Game of Thrones. But that
Yeah.
was the premise they sold. And so these people who are pitching television now, this is a book. We know how it ends. Give us one season of this airport read murder show and we will do it up. And it's that sure thing
Hmm.
that networks want. It's that IP familiarity that networks want. Um but it's also this like bizarre piloting process, this new piloting process. Essentially, like you get 6 episodes or 10 episodes to prove to us that you can make a show beyond that.
Yeah.
And but the problem is, and this happened with like Josh Schwartz on the OC. When you throw everything at the wall in your first season, what do you have for your follow-up seasons?
Absolutely.
And
I
then it
mean,
becomes, especially if it's especially if it's like a premise breaking thing like Bad Sisters or Only Murders in the Building. Like it just becomes how many murders can be in this building? Like
yeah.
how many things can afflict this one family of sisters? It's like Cabot Cove level of Murder She Wrote sort of stuff going on.
Maybe
So
we
yeah.
should start our own television version of the TVA from Loki, where we
Okay.
start collapsing these TV shows into one reality and then having them evaporate. So it's like presumed innocent must move into the apartment building from Only Murders in the Building.
Would watch.
You
Would
know, Bad
watch.
Sisters has to I don't even know where Bad Sisters would be appropriate, but yeah.
That's amazing. I think that does it for us. Unless you want, do you want to answer these Taylor Sheridan Sixers
Yeah, I'll
questions?
just hit a lot of people here being really sensitive to the experience of a Philadelphia 76ers fan. Chris, if the Philadelphia 76ers roster starred in a Yellowstone spinoff, who would Kyle Lowry drive to the train station first and who would hold court around a strip poker table while dating a supermodel? This is very complicated. This alludes to the end of Yellowstone.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyle Lowry shouldn't count himself out of train station fodder first. And I guess Daryl Morey would be the Taylor Sheridan of this. And then which Landman characters remind you most of Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Jared McCain? Um, I think Jared McCain is uh, Billy Bob's daughter. Tyrese Maxey is Cooper, the son, and Joel Embiid is um I guess it's John Hamm. I don't know. It's hard. It's not a one-to-one comparison.
Amazing. Last but not least, and I will say this, knowing that on the latest episode of The Watch, Chris called Industry, I believe, the show of the decade.
Yeah.
The question here is, what does Industry have to do to join the truly HBO prestige, Succession, Sopranos, The Wire, etc., or has it already? You say yes, I say no, but you
I
know,
don't think it's I don't know what's the last so Succession would be the last show that has joined our
I
kind
would,
of
I
inner
would,
circle Ring of Honor kind of place, right?
well, I would say White Lotus is in there, don't you think? Even though it's a bit more, it's an anthology show, but it still has
It's a
that
huge
level.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
I'm really thinking here. I think that industry's concerns, at least superficially, are so impenetrable to some people, both in terms of like the social life that people lead in the show and also what they do professionally in terms of
Yeah.
this kind of like high level private investment banking and buying and selling of stuff that like it's hard it hasn't made itself as approachable as Succession made the American oligarchy, or
Mm.
Mad Men made the advertising industry, or Breaking Bad made meth sales. um it's a little bit more like you feeling around in the dark to try and understand what's going on there. I think I what I meant by show of the decade was just that it felt very reflective of this decade to me.
Mm.
I also
Representative.
think it's my favorite show of the decade, but I think it was a show that grappled with COVID, that grapples with late stage uh voracious predatory capitalism, that
Hmm.
talks a lot about like the sort of dead endness that a lot of young people feel. And it just feels like it's of the moment in a way that a lot of shows kind of shy away from.
I think um I think Industry for me is a tougher hang than these other ones, which is a weird thing to say about like The Wire or Succession, but I
Yeah.
just feel like I think it's lacking, and people can make this argument about Succession, but I think it found a way to do this. root forable characters often on industry, and I don't know
Yeah.
that you need that for a show. I don't like to talk about likability. I like a lot of these characters. I just don't know that maybe this goes back to what you're saying about Tina Fey and Robert Carlock. I don't know that my heart is invested in the industry characters.
Yeah.
But I find them engaging and fun and, interesting, but not
Fun.
emotionally, but not emotionally. I mean, nightmare,
Yeah.
absolute nightmare people. So that does it, I guess, for our little mailbag
This was fun. I hope
experience.
everybody enjoyed watching. They can watch whatever on the Ringer TV YouTube channel. It was great doing this with you, Joe.
You too, Chris. See you soon.